So, welcome to another show of Live with Carisha. I'm your host, Carisha the Diva, and I am pleased to bring you Jade Simmons, 2020 presidential candidate. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for making room for me, Carisha. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. First, so you're new to the are you new to the political world?
I'm new to the political world, but I've actually been running since January. So some people are just now for the first time hearing about me because of you. But I've been out here running for like 8 months now, running very seriously as an independent. That's one of the reasons you don't hear about me, because I'm not running as a Democrat or as a Republican.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, your background, what school did you go to?
Yeah, I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, Southern girl at heart. I went to school up in Chicago, Northwestern University, came to grad school here in Houston, Texas, to Rice University. I am married to my high school sweetheart from Charleston. So we've been together since we were 15 years old, believe it or not. And we have 2 kiddos here. My son is 12, my daughter is 6. And just like many Americans right now, I am running a business, homeschooling, but then also running for president in the midst of it all.
So, okay, what made you decide to run?
We could take an hour just to unpack that one question.
Really? Okay, give us the short back end story of it. What was the spark to let you know, like, I have got to do this? I've got to run.
For a few years now, my family and I have been talking about it. We sensed that something like this was coming. I'm sitting next to this piano here, which is how I made my early career. Mm-hmm. But my career evolved pretty quickly. I'm now brought in by many major organizations and companies to help them navigate incredible change, to help them build up a new level of leadership within their ranks. And we're talking the likes of Hershey, Mass Mutual, NBC Universal. So I'm brought in, one of the most sought after speakers in the nation, actually, very proud of that. Mm. Many people, it seems like, well, why would you stop what you were doing to do this? But the way my father raised me, he's a civil rights activist, still doing what he does back in Charleston. And he raised me and my sister to believe that if you see injustices being done, if you see wrongs that need to be right, if you see voids that need to be filled, instead of complaining about it and wondering who else is going to do it, at some point you have to ask yourself, might I be someone who needs to toss their hat in a ring for such a time as this? So while you asked, I'm not a politician, and I think that's the last thing we need going into this new era right here. And so I'm running as an independent so that Americans will know that I'm not against them. When we do this red and blue thing, we have to wonder, who's the leader really for? Are they going to serve me, right? And so this is a new lane of leadership. And I felt, for 2 reasons, the main reasons to run. Back in January, I felt very seriously that we were coming into a season where race relations was going to be at an all-time low. That's an issue that I feel very equipped to deal with. I also felt like we were coming into a season where our economic differences between rich and poor was so big now, mm-hmm. that those things needed to be exposed. I didn't know COVID-19 was going to happen. I didn't know George Floyd was going to happen. And those 2 things accelerated the very things that I just told you were the reason that I decided to run.
It's been a crazy 2020, huh? Talk to
crazy,
us a little.
Probably the understatement.
Honestly, I'm hoping that moving forward that we can have a good tail end of it. And when the holidays get here, everything kind of smooths out. I mean, hopefully you make it to office and we have you as our new president of the United States. Talk to us about Operation Restoration 2020.
Yeah, that is the movement powering my campaign. It's also the website, operationrestoration2020.com. It's where we encourage everyone to go do their homework, look at the policy, listen to what I'm saying, see if the vision that I'm casting matches up with how you want to see the nation, right? So Carisha, when you think about what you want the tail end of the year to look like, what you want 21 to look like, you already can imagine what that looks like and what it feels like. And so people keep saying, why do you think you're better than Trump or better than Biden? And I keep saying, that's the wrong question. The question is, which person has the right vision for this moment, will be capable of executing it without causing more division, but also moving through powerfully. So this era we're in now is not just a bunch of symbolism or a bunch of darkness for nothing. We owe the people who've lost their lives in this season to come out of this not more divided, not with more death, and not with more politics as usual. So that's why I'm, standing here boldly, been doing it for 8 months, and we're not going anywhere. We're doing all the due diligence to make sure that as many Americans possible can vote for a powerful option that they actually believe in.
When, if someone was to say that, question the fact that you don't have any political experience, what would you say to that?
Well, they should be worried about that because the current president ran on not having any political experience. He ran on it like it was positive. He said that he was a political outsider, but that's not actually true. If you look at his record, he funded both Democrats and Republicans to get into office. He was a practicing Democrat for most of his life. And then when he got into office, he said he was going to drain the swamp. And I say he became one of the biggest alligators in the swamp. Right. And so if you ask yourself, let's say you're not a fan of the president, and you ask yourself, what's the top 5 reasons I'm not a fan of Donald Trump? It has nothing to do with his lack of political experience. It has to do with his character, who he is, and how he decides to make decisions. They're always based on personal agenda. Right now, every decision he's making is based on re-election chances, right? What's the best headline? What's going to read the best with my base? That's not how you lead us through this time. You can't be thinking in terms of red and blue, or even re-election or election if you're on the other side. You can't just be scaring people to get the vote. And when you use fear as the motivating factor, what you tell me is you don't actually care about the welfare of the people. Because let's say you stoke up all that fear and then you lose.
Right.
Now you just got all these people hanging out here in unnecessary fear, unnecessarily fearing people they shouldn't fear, walking around creating more division, more animosity, more hatred, and ultimately more violence. So we need to listen to how our politicians are speaking to us. And so I say people should be excited about the fact that I'm not politics as usual. But that doesn't mean I don't have the experience. The experience that I bring to the table is one of incredible. The president has to be head of state, which means they have to be a stellar communicator, aware of what's going on in the world around them, and able to communicate us through these times. So I come knowing that out of all of the candidates, hands down, I top that bill easily. I say that with great pride because I have the track record to show it. But you also have to have a good commander-in-chief. This person's going to be leading our armed forces. So
right.
What you want is someone who actually cares about the people who are serving us in the service, which means they're not going to make decisions on which world leaders to take out based on which headline plays best, and then put our soldiers, our sailors, our Marines in harm's way. So you want someone who's ready to prioritize people over politics.
Well said. So throughout 2020, there's been a lot of everyone giving their stance on gun control. I know we're out here in Atlanta. Stacey Abrams, who was running for governor of Georgia, she didn't make it, but she got into a lot of, I would say, debates in the media with her stance on gun control. They were saying that she wanted to take guns away from people when she didn't say that. Joe Biden, I remember in the past, said that he wanted to buy back the guns. What is your stance on gun control and making it safer for the American people today?
Yeah, whenever I think we talk about these issues that are traditionally hot button issues, the first thing we have to do is disarm the conversation. So most things in real life are not pro or against. And we know that as individuals because we sit down and have powerful conversations with people we know and love and powerfully disagree with them. So I believe the first order of business is decide what do we really need guns for and what don't we need them for. And so I don't want to stop people from being able to protect their families, right? If you feel like you need to have a gun in your home to protect your family, I don't want to take that from you. But what I need to make sure of is that that gun doesn't end up in the hands of someone it shouldn't. And then my kids are now endangered at their school because of your guns. So we have to have more common sense gun control. And we have to stop allowing the rhetoric to make us think everything is either or. This is a season where you need and. How can people powerfully keep their rights of ownership where guns are concerned without endangering our children in schools? We don't need military grade weapons. Listen, if you need an AK-47 to hunt down a deer, you probably are not a very good hunter. I'm just putting it out there.
I've been saying that for quite some time myself, and I'm just a journalist. I don't understand why you need a gun that big for a deer. Why are you even hunting a deer? But I'm not here to judge. Everyone is free to live their life.
I just think, listen, I'm not a hunter, but I know people who are. I know very responsible gun owners who love their weaponry, but they also believe in common sense gun control. But see, the media doesn't show us that, Carisha. We either see, they'll give you some picture of what looks like a lunatic waving around all these guns saying, guns are, you're not gonna take my guns. And then, or they'll show you someone who looks like they don't want anyone to have weapons. That's not where most Americans lie. We are smart, reasonable people with common sense when given the chance, when not divided intentionally. So I believe we have some balance to achieve. I think we do have to have a discussion around mental health awareness, but we have to do that without making it sound like everyone who suffers from mental illness is violent, because that is not true. So we have to make sure that as we have these discussions, we're not perpetuating stereotypes and stigmas. Personal liberty is important, but your rights end where my rights begin. And so we have to make sure that as we maintain people's individual freedoms, we are still always doing what's best for the good of everyone involved. And I think our children deserve priority. They have not gotten priority where the gun conversation has happened over the last few years.
All right. Another hot topic that's been going on since the past before Trump. Are you pro-life or pro-choice? What's your stance on that?
I'm actually pro-human. So what do I say? I say you must, if you are serious about the sanctity of life, then you got to care about it from the womb all the way to the tomb. So my friends on the right get upset with me because I tell them, listen, don't be crying to me about unborn babies if you're not also going to care about people who die at the border, if you're not also going to care about George Floyd's, if you're not also going to care about Breonna Taylor's, if you're not also going to care about families who are being taken off of public assistance in the middle of COVID-19. All of that is life that needs to be sustained. So I personally believe that abortion is not a good thing. I believe it's a stain on the soul of our nation. But I don't believe that the way to deal with abortion is by taking away the right of a woman to choose. If we're serious now about decreasing the rate of abortion, why not deal with equal pay and make sure that women are paid the same as their male counterparts, so that if they are pregnant and single, they can afford to have the child if they want to? Why aren't we talking about dealing with making sure victims of sexual abuse and sexual assault are treated fairly, and that the people who are doing the crime are not getting out of jail with a little slap on the wrist? We need to talk about stricter, harsher punishment for people who are convicted of rape, especially when that rape results in a pregnancy. And we need to be supporting, if there's a woman who is courageous enough to carry to term a baby who is the product of a rape, we need to be supporting her 100%. And that support needs to be serious, and it needs to be long-term, because we're asking her to make a long-term commitment. But my focus is not on reversing Roe v. Wade. It's not on reversing legislation. I believe that we should do the work of empowering people to choose life more abundantly and put into place as many programs and possibilities for them to do that powerfully.
Very good. What would you do different, if anything, if you were in the Trump campaign?
Oh, like if I were in the administration.
I saw it in your face. Okay, I'm going to retract that. One thing, Ms. Jade Simmons, that you would do differently.
Well, I've been tracking COVID-19 since early December. So when I tell you this thing is real, and it has been real for a very long time, and both the right and the left were not covering this issue. They were preoccupied with the presidential election. They were preoccupied with the impeachment. And both parties knew that this was a real threat. What I would have done differently in the very beginning, this wasn't covered widely, but our government actually turned down help from other nations who were already starting to figure out what COVID-19 looked like. We said, no, thank you. We're American, we'll figure it out ourselves. That to me is isolationism at its worst. We must never be codependent on other nations, but we must also learn from other nations around us. We sat there and watched China, Iran, and Italy really bungle COVID-19. We saw records amount of death, and we didn't learn from it. So I think we should have been more invested in our international partnerships to get a handle on this. Some of this will fall on the World Health Organization. Much of this will fall at China's feet, and we have to be careful not to let them off the hook there. And then secondly, what I would have done, take it seriously first, take from our international partners who were already dealing with it a month before we were. But what I would also do differently is have a national strategy. If you remember, the president stepped back and said, you states go figure it out. That's not because he believed in the power of states' rights. It's because he didn't want the blame for whatever his program would have been, and he was thinking about re-election. And as a result, it set up a real false sense of security. Many of the states that are red states did not take COVID-19 very seriously, and they're now going through a late resurgence of COVID-19. I'm in one of those states. I'm in Texas. Okay. And we just very recently had our hospitals all over again overwhelmed, which means our healthcare workers never got a break, never recovered. And now we're seeing rising rates of suicide amongst our healthcare workers who are now being chaplains, social workers, not just doctors and nurses. They're having to sometimes be the last person someone dying of COVID-19 sees in place of their family. That stress they are taking back with them. And they are still, by the way, not properly outfitted with PPE. Many of them are wearing that same mask into all of the rooms, and they'll tell you we should be changing masks in every room, and they're not able to do that. So there's a lot I would have done differently. Lastly, let me just say, in the long term, we bailed out a lot of these corporations during COVID-19. They need to be bailing us out now, because many of them have their manufacturing centers abroad, which is why they were not able to serve us quickly. We had to go to China and Mexico to get PPEs and ventilators. That shouldn't have been the case. So those corporations now need to be incentivized to come back, but they owe us that because we've bailed them out. And I think now the least they can do is come back, give us new manufacturing centers and new jobs.
Okay, very well. I have 4 topics that I want to roll off at you. I want you to come up with a solution or your stance on these topics in as fast as you can or as accurately as you can. Ready? Okay, here we go. Take on civil rights movement and making it better for the Black community and people of today.
We have to have what I consider to be a new Marshall Plan. That's restitution that includes things like education, economic, and police reform, criminal justice reform. A couple of those things are things like strategic college debt forgiveness, prioritizing areas like healthcare, criminal justice, and education, because we know that having more Black people in those fields will benefit people of color, will benefit Black people. We also have to earmark now loans and financial assistance specifically to Black businesses, not just minority businesses, but Black businesses. That's going to increase the GDP by almost 4%. So there's economic gain to be made for us all. That's just a few of those reforms. You'll find more on my website as well.
All right. How to attack climate change? Yes, global warming is real.
That's a justice issue. I call it environmental justice. And let me tell you something. If we screw over Mother Nature, she does the same back to us and in ways that we can't even imagine. You look at what we're dealing with now, we have proof that so much of what we're experiencing in the abnormalities in weather are due to these climate issues. But here's the thing. We've been talking about this all wrong. If you want Americans to actually care about environmentalism, you got to deal with environmental issues in their own community. So we have to, Americans in American cities have cleaner air, cleaner water. Right now we have especially people of color who live in inner city areas who have rusted over pipes, lead in that water. We now know that that water that has lead in it affects test scores. That kids who are consuming more lead in their water have lower test scores, which perpetuates the stereotype of Black people not being able to learn, capable of learning. So we now have to deal with environmentalism at home. If you help people deal with the stuff going on with their kitchen sinks, maybe then they can care about what's happening at the polar ice caps. But I feel like we've had the discussion in a backwards way and we haven't been able to get buy-in from the American people.
All right. How are you going to help the United States citizens with healthcare?
We want to take a 4-way approach. So the easiest way to describe it is we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think if you do something like the Republicans want to repeal Obamacare, you're going to have over 28 million people instantly off of healthcare. That's moving backwards. So we say, first of all, fix the glitches in Obamacare, because there are many people who are considered who can't afford healthcare even with Obamacare. So we need to fix a few of those glitches that are stopping people from being able to afford it. And then from the top, we pull Medicare down to the age of 55 so that more people can buy into it. That's going to create more competition with insurance companies. And also, since they're able to buy in, what that means is the federal government is not the entire bill. You have healthier people on care. And then you also Medicaid from the, we work with states to can expand Medicaid to people who need it, specifically looking at the disabled as well. And then lastly, we've got to start talking about what universal healthcare might look like. It's not going to look like it looks all over the world. And I think we have to be careful with how we roll it out. I say that we pick spots to experiment with first. And these are the areas that are dealing with a healthcare monopoly in their area. Maybe there's one insurance carrier and they don't have a choice. You start there to see how that public option rolls out. And then over time, you roll it out in phases. That way, we're not handicapping ourselves. What I mean by that is what we don't want to do is create more inequity in the system and have it be so that people who are taking advantage of universal healthcare have the worst healthcare. And then people who can afford better healthcare have the good doctors, the good hospitals, and the good treatment. We've got to make sure that we don't build in inequity as we make sure we have equal system.
Okay, and lastly, terrorism, how to put a better end to it.
Yeah, so going anywhere. And right now, while we are distracted by being divided over COVID-19, we can't even decide whether to wear a mask or not. That's where we still are. Our enemies are watching us very closely, and they are seeing what our fault lines are. They know it's red and blue. All they have to do is instigate, and we easily scatter to one side or the other. Iran right now, we must pay very serious attention to because of the current treaty. We call it a peace treaty, but it's not really a peace treaty between Israel and the UAE. What they're doing is they are squeezing out Iran. So that means now that all these European nations that used to shun Israel for their behavior with Palestine are able, they've been given permission to get behind Israel. You have all of these Arab nations now lining up. On outside is Iran. And you've got them testing out nuclear equipment now. Don't believe the hype. Those are not accidental explosions. So we have to be very careful because Iran and China get in bed together. And those are two world powers. You throw Russia in there, they hate each other, but together because they hate America more. So we have to keep our eyes open, and we have to now deal with truth. And I would say last difference I would like to have seen is that we deal with leaders differently than we deal with the people of the nation. We can have allies, but we cannot ally with them when they continue to commit things like human rights violations. We have to now let the people on the ground know that we stand with them, even if we are at odds with their leaders.
All right, very well. And I have some of your background information. Tell us a little bit about the Impulse Artist Series in 2009 that you founded.
Wow, yeah, that was a long time ago, fresh out of grad school. I realized very quickly that as artists, we were taught how to perform, how to master music, but we weren't taught how to build a career. And so as I was learning how to build my career, I wanted to teach that back to other artists. I don't believe that we should be starving artists. I believe that art provides so much contribution to society that artists should be able to support themselves and have sustainable lives. So that was a nonprofit that helped teach other artists how to build a career and how to build a sustainable one at that.
Okay, so you were also a music artist. You've done some recording.
Yeah, so my entire early career was as a classical concert pianist. All of my schooling was in music. And then in the middle of that career, I got to do many of the things that I set out to do, played in many of the famous halls with incredible orchestras and played recitals all over the world. But as I started to incorporate speaking into my career, the speaking itself took on a career of its own. I'm also a minister and an author. And like I said earlier, I'm brought in to speak about leadership quite often. And so the reason I'm running, people say, why is the pianist running for president? I'm not running.
Why not?
Right? And
why not?
Is, that music for me has built in a lifestyle of focus and discipline. Music, but the discipline what we need now. We don't need a leader that's easily disturbed, emotionally erratic, able to be goaded into making decisions. Our enemies and our allies are watching closely. And the last thing we want is an easily manipulated leader. We also don't want a leader who's been silent and we don't know really where he stands, who feels like he's entitled to our vote. So this to me is a season now where the musician is being called on to set a new tone in our nation. We must be able to be creative and collaborative in this season. And my background as a musician gives me a lot of those things, and I'm very proud of that training.
Wonderful. And you also have some background in the pageant industry. Congratulations on being crowned Miss Chicago and Miss Illinois in 1999.
Yeah.
How has that made you, I like to dig up my receipts. How has that made you a stronger candidate to run for president?
You know, when I was Miss Illinois, I was ultimately first one up at Miss America, and it is very different. People were wondering if the irony there, they thought that President Trump owned Miss America. He doesn't. He used to own the Miss USA pageant, very different organization. But when I was running, you have to have a platform issue. And as Miss Illinois, I had the very controversial platform issue of youth suicide prevention. And I say that because people thought, oh, that's very dark. It should be something sweet and nice and light and fluffy. And I said, no, this is an issue no one's talking about. And before I competed at Miss Illinois, Columbine happened. So suddenly, suicide, youth violence, and bullying were one of the #1 issues in the nation. And so I was able to speak. I got to testify in front of Congress on behalf of mental health funding, mental illness awareness, focused a lot on mental health in the Black community and how it was stigmatized, not talked about, still is to this day. And you'll see even that that's one of the platform issues that we're running on, because it goes through everything. Whether you're talking about the military, we have an issue with mental health awareness there. You know, whether you're talking about the African-American community, talking about the Native American community. I mean, these are serious issues in mental health awareness. We talked about gun control earlier. We have to tackle this issue for a number of reasons. So that was a foray. Being in Miss Illinois and being at Miss America was a foray in advocacy. And even though at the time I was pursuing a career as a musician, it was when I realized that my life was never going to stop and end at the piano, that it would actually revolve around impact. And so if music brought me a chance to impact, I could do that. If ministry did, if speaking did, I could say yes to whatever allowed me to impact broader and farther. And that's what you're seeing me do now as I run for president.
Do you think that, bravo, that's very well said. Do you think that the Trump administration, and since Donald Trump has taken office as a president of the United States, has it sort of hyped up the racial disparities and the racial tension going on in the United States today?
Yeah, and you know what I think is so eye-opening. You know, we're very quick to call the president himself racist. Here's what I think is really disturbing. I don't actually think he personally is a racist. And why do I say that? What I think is worse than that is that I believe he uses racism to stoke the fears of people that he knows are racist. And that to me is even more dangerous, because at least if you know you're dealing with a racist, you know what you got. To me, it's scarier to have someone to play a role, to keep power, to get power, and to stoke division. Now, my stance on that has changed some, because he says so many things that you just can't deny are racist. Right. And so whether or not he's playing a role or not, it still makes you come out looking the same. And what I think is really startling is that the people who follow him, who don't consider themselves, now ask themselves, are they okay continually backing someone who uses racism as a tool, who uses fear as a tool to stoke the frustrations of white people in our nation? And I say, I don't believe that he actually cares about the base that loves him so much, because they are suffering just as much as we are. Poor white people are suffering just as much as many minorities in this country, and yet they're backing a president whose tax laws, whose economic plans do not favor them. So when you see people sticking with someone that doesn't mean them well, you have to ask, why are they sticking with him? And that leads us down the road of some very disturbing answers. You're either sticking with them because you really believe in them, or because you believe that this should be a nation that's as diverse as it is. and that's this has been an eye-opening season, Carisha. We haven't even gotten into some of the other areas of hypocrisy.
For us college kids, it's been crazy too. Everybody is we're all in shock. We were in shock, when the coronavirus first hit at the end of last semester. We were freaking out. I just gotta be honest. We were totally freaked out. No one knew what was going on. When they said that the campus was going to be closed this semester, everybody was stressed out about midterms, about finals, about tuition, about how to pay for things if something closes down. So it has been a crazy 20.
It's been wild. And I think for us, it's been eye-opening in not such a great way. So for instance, running as an independent is the most difficult thing you can take. I'm just telling you, it's the hardest thing you can do. It's much easier to line up with a party and have that backing. But when you line up with a party, your voice belongs to them. Mm-hmm. We watched on the left, all of those Democratic candidates drop out in the same week. That wasn't a coincidence. They were asked to step down. They were asked to line up behind a predetermined candidate. So there was a mockery to me of true diversity and true choice on the left. On the right, there wasn't even allowed to be a challenger to the incumbent. They canceled the primary, so you couldn't even have Republicans wanted to stand up. This is a mockery of our democracy. And I think we need to be more alarmed about that than what people are suspicious of me. Is she being funded by the Russians? Is she being funded by Trump? And when I tell you the hypocrisy, we hear all this stuff about Black voices mattering. I'm going to tell you, the Black voices that matter are the ones that the media wants to matter. It's the ones that they are saying what people want them to say. You have a Black woman not lining with Biden, when you have a Christian who's not lining up with Trump, it's very difficult to penetrate. So that's why I say we are so thankful for independent outlets like yours, because some people are hearing me for the first time, and then they go, we actually resonate with her. Like, she's speaking my language, right?
I'm soaking it all up. I'm soaking it all up.
Yeah, we're not red or blue. That's false. I mean, it's like, it's a way to keep us afraid, to keep us pitted against each other. And you said it, right there in college, y'all were dealing with some real stuff in real time. You weren't thinking about who's red and who's blue, yet above you, the politicians were doing just that. They were splitting us up on party lines during COVID-19.
Right.
The president was talking about the blue states and what the blue states weren't doing, and the red states were rallying behind him. I'm like, your people are not red or blue. And COVID-19, I don't know if anybody noticed, COVID-19 did not discriminate. It killed red, blue, black, white, rich, poor. Yet here we were still playing along with these lines of division. So I'm running this way independently so that people don't have to wonder if I'm going to serve them when I'm in office. Am I looking to get back at them?
Okay, and obviously congratulations to you. You're very, very well-spoken, very intelligent, very strong, amazing Black woman, and I wish you the best of luck. And I have two more things. One, why do you think more bigger media outlets haven't picked up your story?
Well, we don't think we know. We've been told. So there's no incentive for them to carry an independent. The Democrats are worried that if I'm covered, that more Black people will like what I'm saying, more Democrats will like what I'm saying. On the red side, they're worried that Christians will like what I'm saying and that they will find a home in me instead of their major party candidate. People don't know Republicans and Democrats actually have a signed agreement to keep all third-party voices off the stage during the debates. They don't know that. They work together to make sure you don't hear from another voice, because at least they know, how they say, at least you know the devil you know. They know each other. They don't know what to do with wild cards like me that don't line up behind the party lines neatly. So if you've got people thought I'd be for moderates on both sides, what we're finding is even people on the extremes of both sides are falling in with us. We've got conservative Christian pastors who are signing up with Operation Restoration. We've got disgruntled Bernie bros. We've got BLM people who, were looking for more progressive policies. Mm-hmm. So what that tells you is even those words aren't real. Because if progressives and conservatives can find a home in the same candidate, it must mean those words don't really define who we are. They just want to see policies that are going to help people, that are going to actually resonate with who they are. And they want a leader that's going to serve. So that's what people are seeing. And we've been told, we were told by one producer, she told someone who asked on our behalf, and she said, we can't risk covering her. She's too compelling, but we'll cover her after the election. So the real, the real. Americans are being fed a false narrative. And so we've had to get creative at how to break our way around the mainstream media and just take it straight to the people. Here's what we find. When the people find us, they stay. Our conversion rate is serious. When they find us and they do their homework, they stay. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to tell back off of that, speaking for the college kids and the people I speak to, I have a really big hip hop following. I interview a lot of artists, rappers, producers, and I'm that voice that's asking them, are you registered to vote? Are you going to vote? And they feel the same way. A lot of people, the millennials, us younger people, they feel like they don't need to vote because the people up top are going to pick who they want to win this already. And they're hiding people who, like you, have compelling stories when you should be on the forefront. Your story should be up there with the other two candidates. You should be right there on the third tier next to them, so people can hear what you have to say. And that to me is so frustrating. That's why so many young people do not want to vote. That's why even older people who are stuck in their ways that say, oh, I've never voted in 20 years. And they're still not going to vote because they feel the same way. People are hiding people who actually have good guidelines and good topics that they can discuss and that they can fight for. And if they are elected president, they're hiding the truth about things. They're hiding facts that can help people. People just get discouraged and they just feel like, why even vote? My voices are going to be heard.
And I'm going to tell you, they are planning on you to do just that. They run their campaigns on statistics that tell them young people don't vote anyway. So you don't have to worry about serving them. You don't need to put any platforms in that serve them because they're not going to come out anyway. We believe this year is different. And we're seeing people on the streets who said the same thing. They said, I wasn't going to vote until you. Or others who said, I wasn't even registered until you. And so we're excited because, listen, if you've got half of the right looking at you, seeing a home in you, half of the left looking at you, seeing a home in you, independents in the middle, which is the majority of Americans, by the way, they won't tell you that. The majority of Americans consider themselves independent. They're looking at us, and 7 million 17-year-olds about to turn 18 who are coming in saying, we are here to wreck shop. We are not voting like our parents. Listen, we believe the odds are incredible. So our job, you can already vote for me in 44 different states. We're going to release those states, let people know how they can vote for us. Do not be discouraged this year. Okay. Right? And listen, I'm not going to condemn you for feeling like you don't want to vote, because when you do look at the outcome, it looks like your vote doesn't matter. I'm not going to condemn you for that, but I'm going to say this is the season right here to prove the statistics wrong. The reason they don't cater to you or serve you or propose things for you is because they know that normally you stay home. We believe this is the year that college and high school are going to be out in droves, and people are going to be looking at it's going to be like a sneak attack. And so we're excited about it because we do believe that my candidacy will benefit greatly because there are people who see in me a leader that's looking to serve them.
Beautiful. And what is the first thing, in closing, when you make the president of the United States, when you get that office, what is the first thing you are going to do as the president of the United States of America?
You know, it will determine I hope you are right, Carisha. If we get our act together and shut down the spread of COVID-19 by the end of the year, that determines what the beginning of the year looks like. Let's say in a wonderful world, we suddenly started paying attention, knew what we're supposed to do, and COVID-19 was contained, then we get to focus on the creation of new jobs. And I said creation because many of the jobs that exist now or used to are not coming back. So we're going to have to be creative. I think we're going to also have government funded jobs. Testing and tracing is going to be a thing. I think when you guys get out of college and go to a job interview, they're going to say, when's your last COVID-19 test? Like, that's going to be a whole industry. I really do believe it. Yeah. And I also think we have to have a new industry now of ongoing emergency preparation, because we bungled this one. We see a recurrence for 2 years to come. We need to be restocking our storehouse, and we should be the center of restocking for the rest of the world. So you'll see me talk about making us a producer nation, that we become the source of everybody else's goods for a change. We bring our jobs back home. And then unfortunately, if we're not right, if our sunny outlook is wrong, we're still dealing with rising numbers in COVID-19, then my first act will be to focus on pandemic proofing the nation and making sure that we do shut down the spread and make sure that more people don't die unnecessarily.
Bravo. Thank you so much. 2020 presidential candidate, Jade Simmons, checking in on Live with Carisha. Plug in your website. Where can they tune in for more information about everything you have going on?
OperationRestoration2020.com. That's where you're going to find the policy. Hit me up on Instagram, official Jade Simmons, on Facebook at Operation Restoration 2020. We love to hear from you, and spread the word. Donate what you have. We are not corporately funded on purpose, so you don't have to wonder who's pulling my strings. So we are doing this. This is the grassiest it gets, Carisha. So go to that website, donate, and also read the policy and let me know what's resonating with you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much for talking to me. Everybody, Jade Simmons running for president of the United States. Amazing, amazing woman, amazing topics, and amazing things that she can do to make our country a better tomorrow. Everybody go vote, stay blessed, and peace.